Okay, we are in Perek Gimel, Pasuk Zayin. Okay. Vatipakachna einei shnehem, and the eyes of both of them were opened, or were enlightened, aware. They were made aware. I mean, pikeach also means like an expert, somebody who's, or somebody who's very smart or wise. So vatipakachna einei shnehem, their eyes were opened, but meaning their eyes became conscious. Vayedu, and they knew ki erumim heim, that they were naked. Vayit paru alei teina, and they took leaves of fig, and they sewed it together. Vayit paru, to be tofer, they sewed leaves of the fig tree. Vayasu lahem chagorot, and they made for themselves belts. Meaning they were naked, but they only covered a part of it.
Why did he make them belts?
Why did they make themselves belts? Right.
Why did he make belts? This would help. They must lift up
So
trousers.
the Alshech is going to ask
To hold it up, no?
No.
They didn't say make them trousers. Just make them belts.
The Alshech is going to ask this. That's a good question. Vayishmu et kol Adonai Elohim mithalech bagan leruach hayom. And they heard the voice of Havaya Elokim mithalech. It was traveling bagan.
It's a mistranslation. Chagorah these days is a belt. Chagorah there, probably would translate it as loincloth.
Either way, the Alshech feels that this is problematic. And he thinks it doesn't matter. He says it's not enough. Whatever, we'll hold that thought. We're going to address it. Vayishmu et kol Adonai Elohim metalech bagan leruach hayom. And they heard the voice of Havaya Elokim traveling through the garden to the wind or the breeze or the spirit of the day. Vayitchabeh ha'adam v'ishto, and Adam and his wife hid mipnei Adonai Elohim, from the face of Havaya Elokim, betoch eitz hagan, amongst the trees of the garden. So they put on belts, and now they're hiding. It says vayitchabeh, and they hid, right, within the trees. Okay. Vayikra Adonai Elohim ala Adam, and Havaya Elokim called to man. Vayomer lo, and he said to him, Ayeka, where are you? Vayomer et kolcha shamati bagan, and he answered, meaning Adam answered, your voice I heard in the garden. Va'ira, and I was afraid. Ki ero manochi, because I was naked. Ve'echaveh, and I hid. It doesn't say he was ashamed because he was naked. It says he was scared. He had fear because he was naked, and he hid. Okay. Vayomer, and God said back, Mi higid lecha? Who told you, ki eromata, that you're naked? Hamin ha'etz asher tziviticha levilti achal mimeno? Is it from the tree that I commanded that you do not eat from it? Achalta? You ate? Dun dun dun. Okay.
Should have been an actor.
Too much television. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Vatipakachna einei shnehem, and the eyes of both of them opened. Hine, behold, hapikchut eineihem halaz, the opening of their eyes that this is referring to. Ra'ui lasim lev, it is worth noting here, paying attention. Ki halo adarabba. Was it not just the opposite? It wouldn't a direct result of eating from the tree be that their eyes and their heart were closed now to reality? Why does the verse testify to the fact that they were indeed made aware? Ve'im hu ki mikodem hayu bilti yodim mahut ra v'lo yitboshashu biyotam haramim. If it was because initially before eating from the tree they were completely pure and they did not know at all from the nature of evil, and therefore they could not be embarrassed from being naked. Ki lihiyotam shkuyim b'kedusha, because they were so fully immersed, their being in sanctity and holiness. Hayu lahem klei hamishkal keyadayim v'chotam v'aznaim. The limbs that they had for copulation and procreation, those were specific, meaning those were not any different to them, like their hands or their nostrils or their ears. However, ata, now, as if suddenly, hiskilu ma.
So the only thing that they thought was naked was from here down.
The only thing that seems to get their attention now are their genitals.
Here up is no problem.
It seems that they're only concerned about their genitals.
Up here doesn't help them.
That it would seem.
But a woman is doesn't uncover the top.
You know, I would refer to you to the Gemara in Sota that discusses how a Sota, under certain occasions, she's actually, her chest is bared in the Beis Hamikdash, and there's a machloket Rabbi Meir, the Chachamim, about a man when he gets skila al pi betin, if he's naked, if a woman is naked, if a woman's not naked. But that's kind of off topic here. Here, according to simple pshat, that's what he's saying. So just bear with him, because we don't know where he's going to take it, and if we just give him a few more words, maybe he can elucidate for us. So once again, just so we don't lose the train of thought. The imhu ki mikodam hayu bilti yodim mahut ra v'lo yitboshashu beyotam arumim. If it was because previous to eating, they did not know the nature of evil, and therefore they could not be ashamed of being embarrassed, ki liotam shkuim b'kedusha, because through being fully immersed in holiness, hayu lahem klei hamishkal, the tools of copulating, meaning the parts of their bodies, the limbs that were specifically for that, were kayadayim, just like hands, v'chotam, and like their nostrils, v'aznayim. You know how he's referring to all parts of the body that are not covered. Hold on, please, because this is exactly where I stopped last time. I did not finish the thought. Ata, however, hiskilu, now, if you're going to suggest that now they were aware, mahutara, of the essence of evil, vayedu ki arumim heim, and suddenly now they knew that they are naked, vayit boshashu, and suddenly they're ashamed. Hayim yachsar mahem lachasot basar erva in lo ba'alei teina. Is it lacking for them to cover, meaning why should they only be covering the flesh of their erva, their genitals, right, and not their whole body? Or do they only have, meaning the leaves of a fig that they can only prioritize, and therefore they only have to cover a part of them? Why don't they cover all of them? And indeed, if these the leaves of the fig were something that would last them, how could the verse say later, Va'ira, Adam says, and I feared, ki ero manochi, because I was naked, va'achave, and I covered myself. Achave means to hide. What is it? It sounds like he had to cover himself because he was completely naked, not just his genitals. Harei nitkaseh. He was, meaning, if he's concerned only about his genitals, he was already covered. Why does he have to say va'achave, and I had to hide? So Alshech is noting there's also the issue of a localized part of the body that's covered, and also Adam says he has to hide. So is that because he's naked? If he's naked and he has to hide, what's the significance of the localized alei te'ena?
You're saying that the te'ena neutralized the issue of him being naked, and so why is he hiding?
He's saying two questions. Is the problem that he's naked, or is the problem that why is he only concerned about his genitals? And if you say that he's only concerned about that because before the Chet, his genitals were just like hands and ears and a nose, and they didn't need any special consideration or any sort of covering, and now suddenly they do, but why does the pasuk keep on saying that he was naked, ero, meaning completely naked, and therefore he felt the need, va'achave, ve'echave, and I hid, meaning he was completely covered. Meaning, why should, echave means to hide.
Yeah.
Right? There's covering and hiding.
Right.
He's wearing a loincloth now, like you pointed out.
Right.
Why does he have to hide?
Uh-huh.
I wonder what's the connection between eating of the tree and good and evil and nakedness.
So,
And some people hold that being naked is good. That is a whole
return to nature movement.
Huh?
The return to nature movement. The nudist colony idea. Yeah.
I'm in favour of nudists.
Well, hold that thought. There's also a question here.
The other thoughts I've got to hold. I wouldn't
Okay. There's also another question here. Is knowledge of being naked evil? Why is shame come with that knowledge?
Okay, so I'm just going to spell it out. The pasuk is saying, if we zoom out for a second, the Torah is saying something very powerful. It's saying, of all the things that it chose to describe the impact of the Eitz Hadat, it tells you before they ate, it's very important to tell you they were naked and they had no shame. And immediately afterwards, the implications are they're naked and they had shame. So the greatest implications, in order to discuss what the difference, the before and after of eating from the Eitz Hadat, is in this issue. This is the issue that the Torah uses to compare the before and after. Right. There was nothing wrong with them being naked before, just the opposite. That was their natural, that was how they were meant to be. The reason why the return to nature movement is ridiculous is because you cannot go to Gan Eden until you have gotten rid of the poison of the snake. Meaning, you can't just pretend you're in Gan Eden and live that way if you're not truly as innocent as Adam was before the Eitz Hadat. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, now, how do we understand the implications of the Eitz Hadat, meaning the Eitz Hadat, that its implications directly are that now that you're naked, you have to be covered. And we talked about this. This is very simple to understand. It's because before eating from the Eitz Hadat, they could do no wrong. Now that they could do wrong, specifically, we have to understand why it's localized and symbolized specifically by their engagement through their sexual being, right? But now, since now they're capable of evil, they have to go out of their way to protect that faculty in a way that is only used for good. That's simple, right? We understand that? The question is, why were they tainted specifically over there from the eating of the Eitz Hadat? What is dat? Chibur, connection. How does man do that? Where is that localized and symbolized in their actual practical physical body, being, and in terms of their most intimate relationship? Sexuality, right? With their significant, their soulmate, right? So now, everything would have been innocent. There could have been no act of intimacy before eating from the Eitz Hadat that wasn't actual intimacy. Now they're capable, you've separated that from, now that man is corrupted, and he looks at situations in terms of a personal, subjective sense of good and bad, good for me, bad for me. You could be off. You could be engaging in the world in a way that's not facilitating true mutual connection, but rather you're just used. And therefore, those tools that you have for connection need to be, now you need to approach them that they're only used one way and not the other way. It's very simple to understand, right? That's straightforward?
Right. So how does the shame and the...
why do we call in the Torah
fear.
Misuse of sexuality or the potential, erva? Erva means shame. It says Mitzrayim was ervat haaretz. In terms of spirituality, it was like the most detestable place, right? Jews are not Christians. We do not believe that there's anything fundamentally sinful about sexuality, just the opposite, right? Now, because it was supposed to be the locus of the most sanctified of experiences, it is the most susceptible and vulnerable to corruption, so it requires shmira, right? Okay? So, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
So why was he... We discussed that he was naked.
Oh, so what's shame
Why
mean?
shame?
Shame means that you are vulnerable. You're vulnerable because, meaning he understands that there's something in him that he can use this from a corrupted point of view.
He's ashamed of his ability to do evil now.
Exactly, and that demands then that he protects it and precludes that from happening. Shmira, right? When you cover something, what's tzniut? What does tzniut mean?
Respectable, I guess. Protected.
Modesty, right? They talk about what does modesty mean? People think, from a religious point of view, in terms of behavior, that modesty, meaning on the lowest level, means that we don't incite our lusts and our passions, so we cover over things so as not to draw attention to cause licentious thoughts. That is such a chitzoni ramification of truly what tzniut is. Tzniut means that in order for things to be intimate, they need to be special, which means that there is a prioritizing, right, of, prioritizing is not the right word, but meaning you do not, intimacy is only because you don't share everything all the time. If you shared everything all the time, there's no intimacy, right? So secrets, right, the things that you share, the appropriateness, right, you only, where there is vessels for appropriateness, for intimacy, right, that's where you share. You do not, right? Tzniut means that there are things that are dedicated, that are reserved for appropriate situations, right? Appropriateness means that where there's an ability to create connection, that's where there's vulnerability and exposure. And where there isn't, it's inappropriate, right? It's the shmirah, essentially. You don't go around, if you want to build connection, that means there are things, the closer you get to me, right, the more we'll be able to share, right? So tzniut means that everything's not just in the open, because there should be value and meaning to sharing. That's what creates specialness, which creates intimacy, right? So the way I behave with a significant relationship, it's unique because that's not how I interact with everyone else. And that, right, the deeper, closer our bond, the more we share in ways that are not shared, right? So that's what tzniut means. So tzniut is the same idea as the protection, meaning because the exposure, meaning the realities of connection now are really up to you, because it's not automatic that it will always be appropriate. You've been corrupted. So now it's exactly like the Nachash said. Now that you know what evil is, now it means something, right? When you choose good, and you actually have to take safeguards and preserve to maintain this idea so that things don't get corrupted.
So this fear that he experiences is not shame. It's fear that he might use the knowledge to do something bad.
We don't know, because once again, at this level of where the Alshech is questioning things, he's raising questions, and he might totally switch. Meaning we'll react to the Alshech when he finishes his thought. Okay. So once again, he asks, why were they only concerned with covering one part of themselves, and yet they speak? Adam says, I was naked and I had fear and I hid. Ve'od, and further, shahaya lo lomar va'evosh. It should have said, and I was ashamed. Ve'lo va'ira, and I was scared. Ve'od, ki mi shahaya gufo gadol me'od. The Midrash talks about how big they were. Adam and Eve are described as being very, very, very tall. That the round of the heel of Adam blocked out the sun. That's the language of Chazal, whatever that means. So if they were very, very, very large, how could they hope to